This is the center, a gorgeous map filled with godlike creatures. This is my new challenge and I have 100 days to beat Primal Chaos, a mod with everything from demonic dilos, elemental rexes, and rage-filled dodos hunting you down at every turn. I have a few goals which will be revealed throughout this video, as I want to see if I can not just beat this mod, but 100% it as well. That includes a fight against a Death Knight on day 100, the final boss with hundreds of millions of health. And this is the story of how it all went, as I woke up on a beach already hearing some explosions in the distance. So I walked around only to immediately have some scary looking dilos start tracking me, forcing me to jump in the water to hide and swim to shore. This beach was absolutely full of scary looking creatures, like this alpha carbo which again wanted to attack me, so I hid in the water again, causing it to lose interest. I was just glad the slow creatures were finding me, and I began to grab some bushes for berries and fiber, only to hear the explosions getting louder.
Is that a dilo causing those explosions?
That it was. A demonic dilo, and something I have to tame as one of my later challenges is to tame one of every demonic creatures. But the first steps I had to take was gathering some fiber and wood, then unlocked some tools and cloth armor, crafting up the pants, hat and shirt, not that any would actually save me if that dilo got any closer, and I then wanted to make the Primal Spear, a reusable narco berry tipped wooden spear. So to get the berries I needed, I had to stuff dozens of bushes into my pocket, then made a pickaxe so I could smash these rocks for the flint I needed. Gathered the final few berries and then made the Primal Spear, a basic yet barely formidable weapon, great for killing some dodos.
First blood.
With the dodo and a spear to head induced permanent coma, I chopped it into meat and hide, then began to make my way down the beach using my pick to gather some more wood and thatch, making an axe and my chibi. This is Little Nat, and you can come craft your own on the server that was open to my patrons and now members of the Discord. Link is in the description. But I have a journey to continue as I needed some items for early survival.
Okay, my main goal for now, I want to get myself a spyglass so I can actually see what some of these things are.
With that goal in mind, I continued on finding a legendary egg. These eggs are super important for kibble, but I'll cover that a little later. As I spotted a baby running around, and it was just a little baby terror bird who I was able to just freely claim.
I'm not ready to be a parent. Wait, whose child is this? Alright, I'm gonna name you Timmy. Oh, you're a girl. Ah, still Timmy. Come along, Timmy. Nat! You monster! Oh, you're so fun. You're... Oh. Okay.
I awoke to explosions right next to me after my first death. Clearly just a fluke dying to a dodo. I grabbed some eggs which had been left behind nearby, then ran over to collect my stuff only for the dodo to spot me and murder me in the water.
Okay. Alpha dodo scary.
Respawning again, this time much closer to that dilo who had been exploding things earlier, allowing me to get a good look using the photo mode, and this dilo dude looked awesome. But knowing what this guy can do, began to run away back towards my stuff only to hear an explosion as I was running.
I don't think it was even mad at me.
Waking up to some dodos chasing me and a purple jaboa chasing them. Thankfully I got to the water first so I could just swim away. Then was standing around as I saw a beta lystro walking by who got mad at my existence and attacked but was slow, so I just ran away. Grabbing some bushes and resources to make a new pick and clothes. And even a little Nat version 2 in order to end off the day. I started day 2 with spear in hand, determined that today would go much better than day 1. Today we fight our first beta as I turn to face the beta lystro. And victory was mine. I made myself an axe to harvest my reward of some beta blood, beta hide and raw meat. Now in Primal Chaos, each tier of dino from beta until nightmare drops their tier of blood and hide when harvested. So I'll be needing to take down a lot of these creatures in order to progress. But I definitely want some better tools first. So I'll need to get a forge to smelt some metal and make a smithy. I also need a lot of experience. And that's when I spotted a drop down the beach and ran over to it. I didn't get too much from it, just a hide, shirt and some resources. So I then spent some time harvesting flint to be crafted into arrows, firing them into this Lystro's head, harvesting the hide and meat, and I set up a campfire to cook the meat. And with full food and some tools, I knew this beach didn't have any metal or crystal to keep progressing. I was going to need to swim and began to paddle through the water, spotting some strange mantas as a piranha came out of nowhere and munched my booty in one hit, setting back all of my progress. I tried to run across the island to get back, only for an alpha dodo to take me down. I needed a new strategy, and spawned in a new location. Maybe the grass isn't always safer on the other island. I tried to run for my life, only for Beta Terror to come out of nowhere and take me out. Back to the original island it is. Okay, this challenge was going to be harder than I thought. I suppose when you haven't played Ark in months, you do lose all of your non-existent skills. I respawned again, this time deciding to immediately make a break for it, grabbing some resources, then swam over to the island nearby, and it was perfect. There was no tames here at all. Amazing. So I spent the morning of day 3 in safety on my island, smashing rocks, smashing trees, and gently plucking bushes out of the ground, filling my pockets with resources and used them to craft up some structures, building up an incredibly amazing 2x2 thatch shack. But here's the problem with the safety of no dinos. I wanted to make a bed, except to make a bed I needed hide. No dinos means no hide. I tried firing my bow across the water to see if I could get the dinos to come to me instead, but my aim sucked. And I had a chat to my chibi and he had some great advice. So I gathered up some resources to build a small ramp and dived into the water to start swimming across, only for mantas to spot me, stalk me and slaughter me to end off the day with nothing, just like day 1 and 2. And I woke up to have a dodo already on my trail as I sprinted back towards where I had just died. Luring the dodo into the water as the mantas that had just defeated me took out the dodo for me, giving me the chance to safely recollect my gear, and things were looking up, so I drew my bow and used it to take out another beta dodo for harvesting. I then made my way towards the rest of the population, boloing and killing a parasaur. Then was going to take out another only for its friend to attack, so I boloed it and took it down instead, including the dilo who actually had a child that I claimed and named Tyler. With Tyler safely following me, I shot an arrow at his uncle for some more hide, then saw an alpha pteranodon. Now this guy wasn't aggressive. This is my chance for an easy kill, as if I fail it'd just fly away, right? I was wrong, as the bolo ran out and it killed Tyler and I with one hit. I respawned only to get chased and killed by some dodos again and again. There was a raptor, then another dodo, and to top it off, the demonic dilo. I did not have a good time, and by now my stuff had despawned. So back to square one once again. And that involves punching some trees with my fists, but I had a new plan. First though, I needed to calm down a bit. And what better way to do that than blowing up tanks and planes in the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made, Warthunder. They are back once again for their long continued support of the channel, and a game others in my community Discord already love. The game is completely free for PC and consoles, and you can take command of over 2,500 tanks, planes, ships, and more dating back to the 1920s, until the vehicles of mass destruction from today. The game is beautiful with stunning visuals that will immerse yourself in the intense combat, where incredibly detailed vehicles can be destroyed using the realistic X-ray system. You'll be able to see exactly which components were affected and what finally defeated your enemy. It's also really well optimized, running on even the most basic of systems, unlike here in Ark, which requires a supercomputer. Join a community of over 70 million players in some epic battles today by simply clicking the link in the description. New players and those who haven't played in 6 months, you'll get yourself some awesome goodies like multiple premium vehicles, 100,000 silver, and 7 days of premium access. The offer's only available for a short period, so do it soon, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the video. So I quickly harvested some resources resources to make the basic gear I needed. Ran from a beta dodo I shot with my bow only for the moss chops to take me out. Twice. So once I had new tools again, I was able to use them to harvest some hide and wood, gathering fiber, hide and wood in order to craft and place down a raft. I set up some foundations and a bed, and my first ever place to be able to actually respawn. Now I can actually start making some progress. It only took 5 days, thus I set sail in search of where I may find some crystal for a spyglass. Goodbye island of suffering, it's time to go find a new source of pain. Sailing far down the coast until I ended up around Skull Island. Here I was forced ashore for a bit as a lead attacked, causing my journey to halt. So I took the chance to harvest some bushes and trees, crafting new cloth armor and a chibi of Little Nat version 4. It felt good to be re-geared and on my raft. I was officially further along than I ever had been so far. Now I needed to pick a spot though and sailed along past some explosions till I found a small cove with some beta parasaurs and what looked like some ruins. Here would be a good place to start and park my raft and jumped ashore. I wanted to get a bed down in the ruins for safety and I grabbed one from my raft, leaving one just in case, then sprinted up the ruins to place down my foundation and bed. Now I was brave enough to take out these parasaurs. I crafted up a bow and some arrows, then held my bowler in hand and threw it at one of the paras, fired a few arrows killing the para only to then turn my head.
That's a big turtle.
That is the Hydro Turtle, one of the guardians that I need to take down in this 100 days. I set up a campfire in my base before taking out the remaining para, harvesting it up, then had another look at the turtle.
That's a really big turtle.
Safe to say, I was a little intimidated, but I was ready for the challenge. And in the morning of day 7 I saw a Lystra attacking some dodos and I had to intervene. Taking out the Lystra and the dodo's parent, naming the baby Trudy, but I wanted more. So with my primal spear I began to take out the dodo's parents, claiming the babies, naming them Tony, Tyler and Tammy, imprinting them and leading them up to the foundation. Not quite sure I can fully call this a base yet, and I then needed just a few more resources as I began to craft myself a Chaos Forge. This structure is a much faster smelter than a regular forge, and can also be used to smelt the Primal Chaos ingots by infusing metal with the relevant Primal Chaos blood. I used some of my beta blood to make some beta ingots to let myself craft a primal grappling gun. With my new tool, surely I'd be able to find some crystal, as my main short-term goal was still make a spyglass. Pulling myself up a cliff, and I could see another cliff from my vantage point I wanted to check out. Then as I was searching around, I began to hear some bugs, only to turn and see a massive ant. I sprinted to get away from the giant ants chasing me, dropping back off the cliff and lowering myself with the grapple. Maybe I needed to try further away than I thought as I ran home. I ran around the edge of my cove where I spotted some alpha dodos, aggroed them over and grappled up the cliffside to rain down spears on them. But it felt slow and tried to get a better vantage point only to fall off as a dodo chased me down before I could save myself. Respawning at my bed, I now had to deal with some dodos, only to die once more to them. This time though, I used my raft to drag them far away before diving into the water to recover my gear, grappling back up to the cliffside to finish taking out the dodos below, hacking them up with my axe for their resources, but I still wanted to get myself a spyglass and maybe even some metal tools. So I used my pickaxe to harvest up a ton of rocks to collect as much metal as I could. So I finally managed to harvest a whole 19 metal. Smelted it all into ingots and set up a primal smithy. Here I was able to use some of the beta metal ingots to make a new pickaxe, and these things was a huge improvement to my stone pick. So I definitely want a full set of tools of this. But I need more metal. Before I set off though, I did see a beta turtle swimming around the bay. And it took a few spears but brought it down to harvest it up. Then decided it was time to go get some actual metal. So I set sail for Skull Island. Parking the raft next to it, I began to scale up the skull. Pulling myself all the way up where I did find some obsidian I mined. I didn't need any right now, but it may be useful later on. Then kept grappling my way up, stopping to pick some berries to suckle on for water, until finally I reached the top, and I had to scour the area till I found a metal-rich rock I was able to destroy with my pick, pocketing all of the metal to be smelted at home. But I still wanted some crystal as well, dropping down to where I had spotted some before filling my pockets with that sweet, sweet crystal. It felt good. Now I just had to get back safely, and I was already dying of thirst, starting to abseil down the mountain. Finally finding some water with a tiny spot where I could actually drink, and eventually I got down to the water and quickly zipped across with my grapples, till I got to my raft for one final journey home. Just a short, safe journey.
Oh my god! Wow!
And that definitely didn't almost end terribly. Finally arriving home where I could grapple up and throw the metal into the forge, cut down one final tree and made the awesome spyglass. This very important tool will show me a creature's name, its health, its torpor, levels, and what you need to tame it. It is very important for a mod you've never played before, and I then used some of the ingots to make a full set of beta tools like the hatchet, sickle, and pike. Using my axe was able to gather a ton of wood, so much that I was actually weighed down as a dodo attacked and killed me. I had to drop down and quickly grab a bowler to trap the dodo before it killed me again so I could get my stuff, and using the pike was able to kill off the dodo in order to end off day 10, having made more progress in 2 days than I had the entire playthrough so far. Waking up in the morning of day 11, I saw another beta lystro that I had to stop killing a dodo, and saw there was actually some alpha tools, an even better version than the beta tools I already had, so of course I wanted to try and get them. I just first had to cut down some trees, then headed out to begin hunting some alphas, rounding the corner only to be right next to a dodo. I immediately turned to grapple up out of harm's way, only to then see the dodo was not the scariest dino on this beach, as a legendary indominus Rex was rampaging around. I took my time to lower myself down and take out the dodo with my spears, before finishing it off with the pike. And it was just enough alpha blood to make into 10 alpha ingots and craft the alpha pickaxe. This should help gathering the remaining blood much faster, so with the pickaxe in hand, I ran off and hunt, boloing an alpha dodo to take it down and harvest, and was about to bolo a second as a bird snatched the bolas from my hand. I sprinted to get away, wrapping around to pick up my bolas and take out the alpha dodo. That could have gone badly. I took out a couple lystros as well as another dodo, then heading home there was one more dodo and a parasaur, before grappling up to my small base to begin smelting the ingots. And with all my new alpha ingots, I made up a full set of alpha tools, but I really needed to start actually progressing in this mod. So I set sail on my raft, where I did find a strange looking piranha that I wanted to drag onto shore with my grapple, but it didn't work, so I just kept moving. Hunting down dodos to harvest for blood and hide, taking them out with my bowler and pike, even killing a lystro, moschops, and pteranodon. Then as I was continuing to hunt, I spotted a massive skeletal trike with over 12 million health, and it was only level 20. But I had enough blood for some narcotics and decided to just sail home. Except home was not seeming quite as safe as I left it, as I grappled up only to see the legendary indom right outside my non-existent doorstep. I whistled my dodos to get away just in case it was to aggro while crafting up my first few alpha trike arrows, and also made a smithy to craft a crossbow so I could actually fire the arrows, before grappling up the cliffs to have a look at this indom. And it seemed highly interested in me before it ran off into the woods where I could no longer see it. Clever girl. I now just had to be extremely careful, and wanted to make my first pieces of beta kibble, and I think while I set up a farm I'll give you a quick explanation of how kibble and Primal Chaos works. There are currently 7 tiers of tameable dinos, from vanilla up to demonic and angelic, and there are plans to add more tiers later on, but this will still be relevant then as well. If you want to tame the next tier of dino, you need that tier's kibble. That kibble is made using the eggs of the tier below it, as well as some other ingredients. So if I wanted to tame an alpha dino, I would need to make alpha kibble. That alpha kibble is made using beta eggs, some meat and veggies. And there are some more specific ingredients I'll cover later, like the elemental fruits, but I'm not close to that yet. But now I at least had some crop plots down for all my veggies to start growing. Except in order for them to grow well, I needed fertilizer, and ran off in search of a Phiomia to tame. I couldn't see any nearby my base though, and was going to search down the beach only to be scared by the indom and have to hide in the water. Ultimately decided I was going to need to travel and set sail on my raft. Looking on islands only to spot a trike, and since I didn't have any berry farmers yet, decided to trank it out. And with it sleeping, I began to harvest some berries. Spotting an alpha lystra I took out for the easy blood and hide, then scanned the coastline only to see it, the glorious Phiomia. I wanted it. Running across the beach, dodging all of the trikes and taking out the dodo, before loading my crossbow to trank out the Phiomia, even if I did finish it off with my narco spear. It was then I realized I'd actually gotten 2 for 1 as it had a baby wandering around. Once it tamed, I claimed the baby, who I named Twit, then named the dad Twat, saddled him up before riding back to the raft. I led the baby over as well so the trike could finish taming. Named it Trickle after a trike I tamed in an old Primal Fear 100 days video, which you can watch after this one. And then I wanted some hide for the saddle, only to find another baby Phiomia I claimed to name Twat. I could then freely use my pike to take out the turtle for its hide, harvested some bushes and trees to craft the trike saddle, only to be slightly over encumbered. So I had to make a chest that I put on the raft to dump off my resources so I could finally ride my first tame in this 100 days. My trike was a beast at gathering bushes, way better than when I was doing it by hand. So after gathering a couple dozen bushes, I set up a small extension for my raft in order to lead Twat and Twat onto it, to then set sail with Twit, Twat, Twat and Trickle on the journey home. Finally parking on the beach to lead them to their new home of unpaid work. I now also set up a gate at one of the entrances just in case, before setting up some compost bins to begin making use of my new Phiomias, force feeding Twat hundreds of stemberries, causing him to poop multiple times so I could collect it and throw it into the compost bins. I also hatched up some trees for thatch before the rest of the day was spent gathering more poop to fill up the rest of the bins. Once I finally had all the compost bins full and fermenting, I simply used the rest of the feces to fertilize the crop plots, then grabbed some seeds of Trickle, planting one of every veggie as well as majos and narcos. Now they just needed some time to begin growing and went off where I found a pteranodon chilling on the beach. One quick shot to the head was all it took to knock it out, and now it just needed some meat to feed it. Thankfully finding a moss chops with its baby, I ended up piking till they fell asleep to be harvested for some sweet prime meat. Shoved my meat into the pteranodon, eventually taming and named it Twizzler. And I wanted to make a saddle for Twizzler, except some of the trees simply didn't exist. Early access game, I guess. And that's when I spotted how close I actually was to the Hydro Guardian, the massive turtle boss. I chose to not touch it for the moment, taking out an alpha compy, then turned to head home. But once there, when I went to craft the saddle, I found I was short of the chitin I needed. Thus, I ran off to go grapple that cliff where I had seen the giant ants before, pulling myself all the way up, and instead of ants, however, I ran into another dodo. Thankfully, boilers are still effective. I kept moving forwards where I finally found the ants I took down with my pike, giving me at least a small amount of chitin, and I would have kept hunting till I had to run from a Trudon diving off the cliff to grapple back, saving myself from a very sleepy demise. That's when I spotted another turtle, and using my pike began to slowly smash its face in until it died, and I could harvest up the keratin from its shell. See, keratin and chitin both work. So with my supplies, I grappled my way home to begin crafting my terra saddle, eventually taking flight on Twizzle for the very first time. Now with the power of flight, enough time had passed for all my crops to have grown, allowing me to use them to craft my first pieces of beta kibble, as well as a single piece of alpha kibble thanks to the beta eggs I'd been stealing on the beaches. I also set up an egg collector which will collect eggs that my dinos lay in a large area, but I can also sacrifice my female dinos too, and then the collector will passively generate eggs. I threw Tyler and Trudy, my 2 dodo females, into it, then jumped on Twazzle to fly off and see if I could find some beta egg layers. Hovering over a small island, I jumped off Twiz to take out the male dodos. There was just enough time to whip out my crossbow and trank out the first and second, pike down the third and alpha, only for the fourth to charge at me to kill it, as the second alpha dodo arrived, munched on the other to be able to kill me.
It harvested the corpse, healing itself up. Damn it.
Waking up at home, I grabbed my raft to sail back, jumping on Twaz to finish off the alpha, giving me space to collect my stuff, shove the kibble into the dodos, and speedily led them back to the raft, even riding the dodos onto it so I could get the heck out of here. Sailing my new dodos, who I named Toby and Tabby, even though I almost immediately sucked them straight into the egg collector. And with the 2 new additions, I now wanted to get some alpha egg layers. So I crafted up some more narcotics when I saw a beta parasaur near my base. I decided, why not, and tranked it out to tame it. Named it Trout, and it was actually pretty useless at gathering berries. Trickle was much better. Also made sure to keep fertilizing my crops before flying off on Twizzler to see what alpha egg layers I could find with my 1 kibble. I had to scour the islands, flying far and wide, eventually finding an alpha trike. I did have some dodos which decided to get in the way that I took out first since it was a male. Once safe, however, I pulled out my crossbow to trank out the alpha trike, putting it to sleep safely on the cliff to then see I needed the 2nd kibble. With the 2nd piece of kibble acquired, I shoved them both into the alpha trike, who tamed up quickly, and I named it TikTok. But this is where I realized I now need to get TikTok home safely. Sure, I could fetch my raft. I was feeling lazy, so hopped on Twaz to begin leading TikTok through the water, across the islands, only to turn as a volcanic piranha incinerated TikTok mere meters from my base. Well, that's annoying. So after making some new kibble, I flew off again where I found an alpha dodo that I tranked out, shoved in the new kibble, named it Trooper, picked it up with Tweez, flying safely over the water, dropping it at home before integrating it into the egg collector. And you might see there's multiple. That's just cause the mod was a bit buggy when using it. I thankfully now had everything I needed to craft my first piece of elemental kibble. The first types of dinos that I can start to feel just a little bit powerful. I just had to find them and figure out how I was going to safely trank them out. But I had something else I wanted first. I wanted to get some cryopods. But to make those, I needed polymer and I also needed oil. So if I wanted both of those things, it was time to deliver some freedom to some penguins. We took off into the sky to start the long flight to the green obelisk, though immediately distracted by an alpha turtle trapped on a rock, and I just had to trank it out to tame it. Her name was Toronto, but since I didn't have cryopods just yet, I left her behind while I flew on, only for Twoz to run out of stamina, leaving me stuck to parachute behind her. Grappled as I whistled forwards till we eventually found a safe rock to land at in order to regen. Once back on, I made sure to cross the swamp extremely carefully as I heard a spider below. And that is a shadow broodmother. Not something I really want to mess with right now, and chose to keep my distance until I arrived at the green obelisk iceberg. Here there were a couple beta penguins I killed with my Terra, harvesting them up with my alpha tools to ensure I got the most organic polymer possible. And I also had to mine the oil rocks, filling my pockets with the freedom fluid, and with those 2 things my trip was a success, even if I did quickly grab some crystal to go with it before taking off to fly home, arriving at the end of the day. With the resources I had gathered, I was able to craft a couple cryopods, so now I could truly keep my tame safe. I even went to grab Toronto, who had been chilling on the tall rock pillar, then flew home. Now, however, I wanted to make my base safer as well. I just needed to gather a metric ton of stone, and I was about to craft a behemoth stone gate to lock out all of the bad dinos when I heard a commotion. An alpha carbon nemesis was attacking my tames. Everything was trying to fight it off, but my tame started to fall one by one as I myself was killed off as well. Forced to watch as the last few tames I had ran into their death. The only survivor was Twoz, my Terra, and a dodo. I made sure to pick up the scraps which had been left in the corpses of my fallen tames, transferring it over to my smithies while eyeing out the turtle, planning my revenge. I repaired my pike, then jumped to begin sieging the turtle. Revenge was mine. The hardest loss though was all 3 of my Pheomias were dead, and I needed fertilizer to revive my crops. I also needed more meat, and that meant I had to cull all the nearby dinos, including some baby moss chops for their prime. And I wanted to find a replacement for my Pheomia, except I needed to get those defenses up. Thus I spent the morning harvesting thatch, wood and stone, crafting and placing a behemoth gate at the spot where most tames are coming from, and I'd have to defend the other entrances once I had more resources. I was at least able to craft up a couple beta, alpha, and elemental kibble. My first of the elemental kibble, which have a pretty cool mechanic I'll explain as soon as I can tame one, and I also made a couple dozen trankers, which I continue to make throughout this playthrough, so I'll only show you the most important upgrades. Then flew off in search of a dung beetle. Not a super exciting tame, but hey, I needed more fertilizer and this would be much better than a Phiomia. Finally finding one on Skull Island, except I forgot to bring my poop. And as I was zipping home to grab the poop I needed, I spotted something. A level 145 Volcanic raptor. One of the elementals, and that was something I definitely wanted to try and get for myself. I first had to finish taming this dung beetle though. Getting back quickly to hold the poop in my hand, offering it to the beetle in order to tame it, and I named it Toot Toot, and holding my toots in my hands began to fly home, leaving Toots to handle all my feces collection and conversion, while I grappled high up to see if I could spot that volcanic raptor again, but was unsuccessful, instead flying off on Twazzle to try and lead the raptor over to a safer spot, where I could fire my tranks. As it passed out from the force drugs, I now had a new problem. The shadow turkey and all his dodo friends had taken an interest in me, making the area very unsafe. I needed to lure them away and take them out, slowly trying to aggro them to Twaz, luring them away. But then as I tried to lure the turkey, an alpha terror came out of nowhere, killing Twizzler, throwing me to the floor as I sprinted away, barely escaping after some smart grapple usage. Luring everything away was no longer an option and I had to take out the dodos. I began to throw dozens of spears, as no way could I get close with so many of them swarming at my feet. Taking up most of the dodos before the final few were able to get finished off from a different location. I was so close to death, but saw a chance to sprint over to the raptor and shove in my kibble. It tamed quickly and I named it Tectonic, which I thought was pretty fitting. Trapped it in a cryo, then ascended up the cliff to parachute home. Now if only that marked the end of my troubles, but there was a new problem. You see, I wanted to make a saddle for Tectonic, but I needed volcanic hide. I was going to have to somehow take down some volcanics if I had any hopes of making a saddle. But it wasn't just volcanics I needed. You see, there were 3 types of elementals: volcanic, hydro, and electric. But they aren't all equal strength, at least not versus each other. Hydros douse volcanic, volcanic melts electric, and electric shocks hydros. So you need an army of each type if you have any hopes of progressing to the next tier, as I have to take down the elemental guardians in order to progress. Of course I now wanted one of each elemental as well as a breeding pair in order to get an unlimited supply of elemental blood and their respective hides. I just first spent the morning of day 24 taming another parasaur that had wandered into my base. Guess I hadn't stopped all the wanderers just yet. And I named it Tara, then headed out on my raft to the one place I'd seen another volcanic creature. The volcanic piranha, and safe to say, I was pretty embarrassed how long this took me to kill. It was halfway through day 25 by the time the piranha was finally trapped and could simply pike it to death, only to harvest it and get purely fish meat. No volcanic hide. Well, that's a ton of time I won't get back, and I set up a quick fire to cook some food since I'd started starving through all of that, then headed off again on the raft where I boiled an alpha terror, and I quickly shot it to sleep, fed some kibble and tamed. With it flying behind me, I led Pterodon home to saddle him up and fly off. Airborne once again after the death of Twizzler. I ended up coming across my old shelter I'd built very early on that I picked up with my demo gun, continuing along where I ended up spotting a level 100 Hydro Carbonemus. And since my goal was to have each of the elementals, I hid up on the cliffs where I could easily rain down my trank arrows into the turtle's face, getting really close to breaking my crossbow with 1 durability left. Taming it in the morning and podding it up, only to then fly off and find a female, which was a nice low level. If I got this, I would have a breeding pair. I quickly shot home on Terra to repair my crossbow, and also made sure to stock up on some more trank arrows. I'll need to upgrade to better ones soon. Got back to the turtle and filled its face with arrows, and I even saw an alpha oviraptor which may be useful that I tranked and tamed. Finished taming the turtles, then turned to begin the journey home, and threw out the terp and torty for them to start getting their sexy on, pooping out a beautiful baby egg. Grabbing the egg, I was able to hatch it on the beach, and oh, just look how cute the little baby turtle is. I even hatched a second one for good measure. Welcome to Ark, where babies make a great source of resources. I'll need to get some baby farms of every elemental going for the hide I will be needing. Since I now had a breeding hydra pair and only 1 volcanic raptor, I began my quest in search of a breeding pair of volcanics or some electrics, flying across all of the beaches, landing on some to clear out the dinos to claim the loot drops, only to fly across my first nightmare tame, a nightmare Tyrannus. One of the endgame creatures I will need to defeat in order to summon the Death Knight, my final goal for this adventure. I did also have a tree kitty tickle my toes as it leapt past me trying to eat my face. I was just glad it missed. And my journey continued into the redwoods, flying along the coast, when I saw a level 140 electric dire bear. Now that was a tame worth going for. So I landed my Terra and potted it up, set down some sleeping bags, and grappled into the tree to begin raining down arrows into this dire bear's face. But I never expected how long this would actually take. And it was halfway through day 29 by the time I got the dire bear sleeping, even having it pass out in the water at that. It tamed up near instantly from the kibble and I named it Tip Tap. I really needed to get myself some better tranks though, and flew home with Tip Tap in my pockets, feeling chuffed that I now had 1 of each elemental. Now I just needed breeding pairs. Before I went for those pairs, however, I wanted upgrades. And I did have some more baby turtles which I began to imprint as adults give more resources, and went to begin crafting and preparing all the resources I needed for a fabricator. Setting it up, and this is the first step to entering the industrial age. I also made myself a long neck to let me start using darts, crafting up gunpowder for bullets and slaughtering the hydra turtles which had been raising all day, harvesting them for a buttload of elemental blood that I plan to use to make elemental narcotics. I then started day 31 by hatching some more hydra turtle eggs, before leaving them to raise up while I crafted those elemental darts I wanted. Hopefully these are much more effective for tranking some elementals in preparation for the Guardians. Flying off to see if I could find them, but getting distracted by an alpha dodo I wanted to add to my egg layers, then flew off again to the redwoods to begin searching, and searching, and searching. Not finding any tames that I could potentially want. Even continuing into the next morning as I flew over the logs and around the great trees of the redwoods. I did spot another electric dire bear, which was unfortunately a male as well, so had to keep searching, even taking some time to rest Terra's wings high up on a rock. Until finally, as it was starting to get dark, I spotted something. A volcanic death worm. It was only level 50, but I could always get a higher level of the opposite gender, and latched myself high up in a tree to begin sniping down at it. I even began to lower myself to get a better shot, not realizing how far it could actually attack as it took me out with one single swing. This wasn't good. I made up a grapple and spyglass, then jumped on my raft, sailing across the oceans to the redwoods. I almost had a lead ruin my journey, but barely got away into the shore. I now had to survive and get back to my stuff, grappling to a tree high up away from some terror birds chasing me, and I began to Tarzan from tree to tree, using my grapple to dodge the dinos in this deadly forest. I had to run, jump and grapple, swing my way across a ravine to climb onto a log. Finally making it to my stuff, and the worm had scurried away so I could grab it and ascend up into the heights of the tree to safety. This time, I wasn't going to get close at all, beginning to fire dozens of darts, making the worm sleepier and sleepier. finally passing out so I could drop down and shove in my kibble. It took some time for it to tame, then decided to name it Tapeti. And I could ride her without a saddle, and this thing was going to be an absolute beast. For safety though, I potted her up to fly back to the raft and then head home. Unpotted Tapeti then started an absolute rampage. Everything on this beach was going to die, and Tapeti had a massive hit AoE. Betas, alphas, elementals, and even a shadow stood no chance versus Tapeti, who could attack while backing away to prevent any danger. And that's when I spotted a Mystic Jerboa and attacked. It had 89,000 health, but I had the range advantage, knocking the Jerboa around like a piñata, gradually smacking its health lower and lower, until Tapeti finally killed it, dropping me a whole host of loot, but it gave me something even more important that I didn't have yet. It gave me my first bits of mystic blood. I also took out a fairy Pegasus flying around the beaches, and by the time the day was coming to an end, feeling extremely powerful and super excited to get a breeding pair of these things. I started in the morning by turning the mystic blood I'd gotten into ingots, crafting and refining them into a full set of very pink mystic armor. Now, I didn't quite realize at the time, but this armor gave my character quite a few buffs like increased crafting speed, more weight, and some other bonuses. With the new armor, I also made a new pickaxe before hopping on Tapeti for another farming spree, massacring everything on the beaches, farming up the hides and bloods I was going to be needing, and I even took out a pair of legendary trikes which took forever to die, but finally brought them down with Tapeti's massive attack AoE, which is honestly super overpowered and something I already mentioned to the developer, so this has potentially been changed by now. I hope so anyways. And also spotted an electric dodo rex on my rampage, a very scary looking boss variant for the elemental tier. Maybe something I need to consider taming myself. For now though, I settled on just fighting my way through the beach for all of the resources. And I took to the skies in the morning of day 35, flying off in search of some more elementals. Finding nothing but stormy weather made me decide to land and hop onto Tapeti to fight my way through the beaches as I saw another Mystic Jerboa to take out. Fighting through a few of them as well as the elementals around, and it really felt good to feel powerful. I just had to ensure I never ran into any demonics, even moving through the interior of the island as I fought through taking out everything I could. There was a mythic pteranodon that almost thought was going to give me a problem, but there was something else even more dangerous. A shadow rock elemental. It was so tanky and throwing boulders at me, and it took so much damage in order to finally have it crumble at my bites. With it defeated, I hacked it apart with my pickaxe for the resources to carry them home. I just needed more storage space and set up a couple more storage boxes for all of my loot goblin needs, and with my storage problem set up, I also built a generator, as I wanted to build and power my industrial grill. With my cooked meat problems fully sorted, I now just wanted more elementals, so I potted up my death worm to head off on terror, flying through the skies, finally ending at the redwoods once more as I was here to try and get a friend for Tapeti. But my search was hopeless, and decided to head home. And with my now decent amount of mythic blood, I made up my first ever batch of mythic tranquilizer darts, and these are a huge upgrade and the best possible dart I can make so far. So I flew off to see what elementals I could find. I was starting to get desperate, searching across the island, spotting primal resurrecteds, then decided I had to head over to what I knew as Volcano Island. But when I got there, it admittedly just looked like every other island. However, I only cared about the dinos here as I spotted normal rexes, and that meant elemental rexes could spawn, to then spot a max level electric rex. Landing on the cliffs, I began to absolutely pepper this electric rex with darts, hanging in the air to let me continue dropping darts until I ran out. And I had to quickly zip home in the morning, craft and grab more darts, then racing back to find the rex once more and finish off the tranking process. Grabbing the opportunity to sprint in and shove in the kibble, taming the rex who I named Tripper, trapped it up and was going to head home when I spotted something else I wanted. A mate for my volcanic deathworm. Over 30 darts later and it was passed out on the beach. I now just had to get rid of the nearby volcanic Rex. I knew I couldn't kill it. I had to lead it away and jumped off the cliff to parachute away, having left the Rex behind to let me drop down to the worm in order to tame it. Breeding pair of death worms was officially mine. I was ecstatic. I was making progress. I named the death worm Terrapin, only to realize once I got back to my pterodon, I was short of cryopods. That just meant I was riding home on Terrapin as we leaped into the water for the journey home. And atop Terrapin, I started to fight my way, slowly eating up each and every little critter in the path, being careful not to eat my own tail. And once home, I parked the worm before throwing out to Petty, even if I first had to deal with the Bronto that had followed me home. Then turned to start letting my 2 worms breed, only to find they weren't breedable. I was devastated. I'd been so sure this would work, but for whatever reason, they just wouldn't get it on. And I spent the next day recouping my wasted darts, now very behind in my goal of completing 100% by day 100. As now if I can't defeat all 3 guardians by day 50, I won't be fast enough to complete the mod. So I set off to see what new elementals I could find, which could actually breed. Spotting a fairy dragon flying over Volcano Mountain. Eventually finding a level 95 volcanic raptor that I was about to tame as a Rex ate it. Damn. So I kept searching till I found a max level electric Rex, a female this time, as well as another volcanic raptor I quickly tamed up. Then turned to start trying to put the electric Rex to sleep with darts, firing dozens of them as they kept chasing me to eat me. It was truly the most dangerous game of cat and mouse, but finally with a mere 2 darts left, it was down and out. I could sprint in to feed it, but there were too many dangers around, instead luring them away. Only to sneak in and shove the kibble into it to tame it, and sprint away to Pterodon before anything could catch me. All was not good, however. I had only 10 days to defeat the Guardians or I would be seriously behind. Except there was one thing which may speed up my journey just enough that I could fight my first Guardian. I just had to get lucky and find one. So I began to search, drop after drop after drop. I was scouring every drop I could find, so many that I lost count. So many days passed that it was day 45 by the time I was descending into the depths of the center underworld, desperate for one single item which I hoped I could find in here, flying through the caverns until I hit an invisible barrier. I had arrived at the parkour cave, as here there were 2 high quality loot drops, and this puzzle requires you to jump from block to block without falling into lava. I wasn't going to do that. Grappling up and parachuting above the lava, grabbing the first drop, then pulled myself across the chasm to get to the second one. Unfortunately, in the first 3 drops, I did not get the item I wanted and dropped back off into the pool of water below. I then proceeded to waiting for the drops to respawn until they were back at the start of day 46, quickly making my way over to the first drop and nothing. I was losing hope of ever getting it as I grappled over the massive drops, walking up the stairs, finally making it to what felt like over 100 loot drops at this point, and there it was. An Ascendant longneck, by far the biggest upgrade for taming I could ever get. It was only 263%, but damn if I was so excited to finally get this. Out of habit, I grabbed the final drop of this parkour puzzle before running back to Terra to begin my way out of the underworld. Flying through crystal caves, only to spot another drop I went to grab and got a second long neck. Classic. I found the exit fairly quickly to fly up the tunnels and back out into the warm bask of the sun. With my new loot, I headed home, dropping off a mass of resources I had collected from the drops. I made up even more mythic darts, crafted up gunpowder, and set up 2 of my electric Rexes to begin breeding. While they got their frisky on, I did have to harvest up stone and flint to be crafted into spark powder for more bullets. Since I wanted to make even more darts to be able to tame the final few elementals I needed for breeding pairs to fight the Guardians, I headed out once more on Terrapin to see how many I could slay, only to see a Primal Resurrected right outside my base, causing me to be a little more careful than I would be usually. And once past, however, I began to massacre and murder all of the little betas and alphas, abusing the mythics who were too slow to catch me, and simply continue hunting and harvesting along the coastline. Jerboas fell, dodos got squashed, and terrors were plucked out of the sky like tasty little morsels for the giant lava-blooded worm. Even the larger creatures like a para simply got knocked down, but then I met a foe I couldn't get past. A hole. So I had to pot up the worm and walk through on foot to continue the slaughter, only to spot a volcanic spino lurking in the distance. That could be amazing, and potted my worm to climb the ledge and begin sniping at the spino. It started to gain interest and sprint towards me, allowing for an easier shot, and dart after dart doing much more torpor before putting the sail lizard to sleep in the water. I easily parachuted over to stuff in some kibble, taming up the volcanic spino who I gave the name of Torrent to end off the day. And with another volcanic to my name, I still needed a mate for it and kept up my slaughter on Terrapin, fighting down the coast. And that's when I spotted another very powerful tame I may be needing. A high-level Hydra Rex. While I had the turtles already, I doubted they'd be strong enough. So after hiding on a cliff to trank out a Rex, feeding it some kibble and naming it Tap, I was a little disheartened that I now was doing Hydro and Electric Rexes, but I was out of time. And with even fewer options, I needed to start breeding armies, and I needed to start that now. So I kept searching the islands looking for mates, eventually ending up back home with no others to add to my collection. I couldn't let that slow me down, however, as I started to craft some electronics to be used for aircons, making a quick stop by Skull Island where I gathered up more crystal, flying home with my prizes, then made and placed a few air conditioners. And finally, on day 49, I had everything I needed to begin hatching eggs. And my first few baby electric Rexes emerged on the morning of day 50. Trapped them both up in a new soul gun I had made, which is like cryopods but slightly more convenient to use, and this is modded anyway. It's a very handy mod to have while playing that just makes life better. Threw out the Rexes to see they could actually start raising, spending the day huddling around the base and doing some basic chores. Now officially behind schedule of my goal to complete 100% of the mod by day 100, as I still needed to fight the Guardians, but I simply was not quite ready yet. Thus I started the next day by throwing out some eggs to incubate, hatching into the cutest little lightning-fueled Rexes. Trapped them with my Dynagun, and then once some females were raised, added them to the breeding circle, while some extra males were unfortunately sacrificed for their hide to be made into saddles. I then continued to multiply my Rexes, hatching babies, fended off rabbit dodos, and set up a gate to prevent any more rabbit dodos. Also, I could hatch even more Rexes. And when Cyber came to visit, one of my patrons, as since I mentioned earlier, this server's open to my patrons and eventually free for members of my Discord. And I harvested even more of my Rexes in the morning, but I was going to need more berries. So I made up a saddle for Tip Tap, my diabear, and headed out to take out some dinos, all while gathering bushes until I got home, to hatch even more eggs to add to my army. I needed to see how strong this boss was, so I headed out in search of one nearby, finally finding the giant turtle, the Hydro Guardian. I threw out some electric Rexes, and not the full extent of my army just yet, simply so I could see its damage, and sent them into their doom, just to see them die, dealing only like 4k damage and taking over 40k. This was going to be tough. I got home where I planned to set up my army and threw out Tammy? No, not a dodo. I threw out some electric Rexes, feeding them health potions and saddling them up, preparing all the Rexes, getting them all ready before whistling them to follow me one by one as I headed out. And we were so strong. Everything on the beach was dying, so I started to swim the team over the ocean to head towards the turtle. We brought down everything in our path until we got to the turtle, and this was it. Today the Hydro Guardian dies as I sent in the Rexes to destroy the turtle. It was a massacre. The Rexes stood no chance. Maybe this was going to be harder than I thought. I ran around to pick up all of the saddles before scampering off with my tail between my legs to get home. I was going to need a new strategy, and I wanted to test something. Thus, I headed out of my Rex once more back towards the Guardian, where I threw out a small force, but that wasn't my plan as they all got defeated. I force-fed my Rex a healing pot before I charged in, thrashing with my Rex, chomping and munching as the potion kept me alive. But the potion didn't last forever and I had to make a break for it to get out of here. Waiting on the potion cooldown, then popped another one for round 3, but it was futile. The boss was simply too strong as I abandoned the attempt and got the heck out of there with the sun setting as we swam in shame once more to get home. I wanted to try to take out one of the other guardians, as clearly the Hydra was just too strong. So in the morning of day 55, I set up my volcanic spinos to begin breeding up an army, letting the spinos get their freak on so I could trap up the babies as they hatched, gradually growing the army. And as I continued to breed and raise spinos, I eventually had a decent amount of adults that I could throw out to begin preparing, sacrificing a few of them for their hides to be able to make any saddles I wanted. But breeding is a very long and tedious process, continuing on with even more females to speed it up, and quietly watching as my spinos had their fun making babies until I eventually had a nice little horde of spinos ready to do my bidding, prepared to take on my new competitor. And with the sun rising, spinos ready and feeling pumped, I summoned in the electric guardian. I took a step back to eye up my target, then charged in. It killed my spino straight through the health potion. I needed to lock in. I recollected my stuff and got some new spinos to see what they could do. Thunder cracking around the guardian as I sent in the spinos once more, safely from a distance, and yet still stood no chance. I would not be able to defeat this boss. I needed to try something else. I needed to get ready and try to take out the volcanic guardian. In order to do that, I was going to need a team of hydros, but all I had so far was some turtles and a single hydro rex. I crafted up a couple more mythic darts and flew off on Terra, who at this point did feel slightly underpowered, flying from island to island until I spotted a blue-skinned rex chomping through some trees. And it was a male hydro rex, low level, but exactly what I needed. I landed safely on a rock to begin firing my darts, quickly putting the rex to sleep, and there was a little electric saber-tooth roaming around nearby that I had to lead off. So after luring it into the water, I shoved my kibble into the rex for it to tame and named it Topsies. I started my journey home only to spot an electric griffin, and that'd be great to have for my collection. Thus I landed safely nearby and jumped off to grab my rifle, and the griffin attacked Terra, dealing some insane damage, so I trapped up Terra to do this taming solo as I started to dart the griffin. It took a couple darts until it started fleeing as I followed behind, and I took one last shot managing to snipe the griffin, but that may have been a mistake as it plummeted into the depths of the ocean below. I had a look around, even jumping onto my volcanic spino, but it was too dark, too wet and too deep. Eventually swimming off on my spino to head home, and when I did see Monkey D. Luffy's base, another one of my patrons, and I left behind a dodo with that second longneck raft I'd found as a gift for them since they needed it. And it was day 59 when I finally got home with the Hydro Rex breeder. I was already 9 days late to defeating my first guardian, but at least now I finally had my third and final breeding pair to prepare for taking out these guardians. Hatching out multiple Hydro Rexes, refilling my supplies of darts before sending out some Rexes to begin raising up, except I did my Terra slightly too quickly as I sent it into cryo sickness slumber. Whoops. So in the morning with the Rexes healing up, I chose some females to add to the cuddle puddle to begin pumping out even more babies, while some males didn't quite make the cut as they were sacrificed for the greater cause. I did also do some gardening while waiting on some more babies to get laid, and also fed Terra some stimulant to wake up as I had a plan and flew off. I wanted to find a new elemental griffin, and I did. There was a level 100 female electric griffin hovering around nearby, and it took some pretty difficult shots and chases and multiple darts till I found a rock down below it that I could hide below and fire up to knock out the griffin, dropping it right below me so I could simply drop down, feed it some kibble, named it Tulip, and claim my brand new flyer. With my fight against the Volcanic Guardian drawing closer, I spent some time hatching Hydro Rex babies, adding them to the breeding batch while I used my pistol to clear out the unwanted ones and munch them for meat and hide. It truly was a vicious cycle. In the morning, I set up an industrial cooker as I wanted to make some more health potions. Previously, I'd purely been relying on the mythical health potions I got as drops, and I wanted to make some beta and alpha potions. I just had to use my electric diabear to gather up a ton of tinto berries and narco berries, crafting narcotics to make regular health potions, then infuse the brews with beta and alpha blood to make the relevant potions. Then ended off the day by hatching even more babies, but these ones were to be my army. Throwing them out under the sun for them to start healing up, saddling them, giving them health pots, then whistled a few of the strongest to follow me. This was almost it. My third and final shot to make some progress in this mod. If I failed now, the run would be over, and I'd be stumped on what to do. I took some final precautions feeding the Rex army some potions, then turned as I watched the Volcanic Guardian summon in, then charged in my Rexes. It was dead? In seconds? That was way easier than any of the other two. I wasn't going to complain, as killing the Guardian had given me some very important items. In order to progress, I got some volcanic fruit and volcanic seeds, an ingredient for the next tier of kibble. Seeds, which I planted in my small crop farm. I still needed the fruits from the hydro and electric, but I had a new strategy, since I also got some summoners for tameable Volcanic Guardian. Short disclaimer, you're usually only meant to get one, but it was bugged at this stage, and I didn't know. But I crafted up some more elemental kibble that I would be needing. And with darts, kibble and summoner in hand, I flew off to a safe space near my base where I ate the shard, summoning in a level 20 Guardian. Not exactly a great level, but it only took a few darts to try and get out safely from Tulip, a tame I was now extremely happy to have. But the spicy lizard went to sleep, fed it some kibble, named it Trapoid, and this thing was an absolute beast. It looked so freaking hot. I loved it. Able to send up flaming spikes and call in meteors. It was insane. But I wanted a higher level. Thus it was back into the air on Tulip where I summoned in the next 3 Guardians, eventually getting level 90. Still not amazing, but better than the 20. Darted it out, and one other was a bit close for comfort, so I darted it out too. Tamed both, and I named the level 90 Tokolosh and the other Tablet. Now I was ready to cause some destruction. I just saw the other Guardian was still hovering around, and actually nearby was the Electric Guardian, so I decided to see if I could make them fight each other. Even throwing out a Rex to try and tempt them, but it didn't work. So I whistled it in only for the Electric to destroy the Rex and Volcanic Guardian, which actually gave me an idea. I got home where I saddled up Tokolosh, my best spicy lizard, then began to summon destructive waves of meteors down the beach, gradually taking out everything I could in order to farm experience. Boom after boom, creatures died until I arrived at the cliff above the Electric Guardian, where I intended to act out my plan. I started to send out attack after attack, summoning waves of meteors right onto the head of the Electric Guardian. It was a huge eruption of damage, including from the Electric Guardian, as I had to back off to heal before going back in to continue to let chaos reign. Health potions were chugged to keep Tokolosh healthy, as the Guardian's life force slowly melted from the heat of the explosion after explosion, until finally it was dead. With the smoke clearing and the lightning storm fading, I harvested the corpse and saw I had received my prize. Some electric seeds that I planted back at my base, electric fruit I plan to use for kibble, and most importantly for the next step, a tameable Electric Guardian summoner. With everything I needed, I flew off to tame it, summoning it in, firing all the darts into it to trank out the level 145 Guardian. One that tamed up so I could name it Trala, and now this thing. This electrifying beast was what I planned to use to enact my revenge against the Hydro Guardian, which had given me so many problems before. as its lightning storm was incredibly powerful. Feeling like I was ready, I set off on day 66 on Trialer to destroy everything I could, searching for a potential Hydra Guardian to fight, instead finding a nice clear spot where I could read the scroll to bring in the Hydra Guardian. The third and final Guardian evaporated, and with my prizes, I set course for home, feeling absolutely electric. Then set off to finish my trio by summoning in the Hydra Guardian, tranked it out, then added it to my team, Torta Queenie. It felt good. To celebrate the fact all 3 Guardians were dead, I made myself a fully new set of legendary Riot armor. The best possible armor you can craft, before spending the rest of the day gardening and admiring my new Guardian tames, while waiting to be able to craft my first pieces of shadow and fairy kibble. And it was then the next day, by the time I had the crops I needed, cooking up all of the ingredients into a good few pieces of shadow and fairy kibble, flying out on Tulip to search, where I found a female shadow turkey, and it was a pretty simple tame, just shooting at it from Tulip. However, turkeys have an interesting mechanic I noticed, where almost everything nearby will aggro to you if you attack it. So I had to clear out all the random creatures so I could shove in my kibble to tame my first shadow creature. I just had to get it home, except I was short of the dino balls I needed to trap it up. So the process started on day 69, nice, leading the turkey slowly but carefully down the coast, even trying to ride it, except you couldn't in the water for some reason, and running along the coast instead, dragging it through the rivers, till I finally got it home and had it right next to the egg collector to vaporize straight into the machine. Now it just needed a fairy dino for eggs. I did stock up my supplies and set off in search, flying high, flying low, spotting fairy Argies, but it was male, pink female Argies, but it was a mythic. I eventually found another female shadow turkey that I tamed, then kept searching the absolute entire map that the sun was even getting low on the day when I spotted it. A female fairy Argentavis. Dot, kibble, tame, trapped. I just had to get it into the egg collector and I would unlock mythic and legendary kibble, except as I was flying home, I saw a second one, classic Ark, and it tamed just as quickly, getting home as the day 70 was nearing midnight, vaporizing the turkey and both Argents into the egg collector, successful that I'd now unlocked the next 2 tiers of creatures, mythic and legendary. In the morning of day 71, I made up my first pieces of mythic and legendary kibble, the final tier before demonic, the tier of dinos I would need to use to take out the primal resurrected dinos. So once I'd stocked up and harvested everything I needed, I flew off on Tulip in hunt of the creatures I could find. As for this tier of dino, I needed more than just some egg layers. The first I found was a legendary scorpion female who I tranked and named Tickler, then continued hunting, and the reason I wanted more than just egg layers for these tiers, as mythic dinos are really powerful harvesters and farmers. So when I found a level 145 mythic mammoth, I knew I just had to tame it, as it'd make gathering wood super easy. I named her Tully, then flew off and found a max level legendary Carno. And legendary creatures are the fighters. They can gain increased damage every time they kill something. So with the Carno tamed, I named her Tia to end off the day. And I did fly straight into a level 145 mythic Argent that I managed to knock out, taming him up as it would carry tens of thousands of weight, so it would make transporting resources an absolute breeze. With it finally out and tamed, I also snagged a low-level male mythic mammoth nearby just so I could breed them for hide and blood I may need. Then continued my long day of hunting, as while I had the Carno, I didn't have a breeding pair of legendaries just yet. I instead found a mythic Anki which would solve any and all metal problems I may ever have, and that's when I came up to a level 145 legendary thorny dragon. Now, not the most conventional of fighters, but I chose to trank it out in order to tame it, since now I just needed a mate for it, spending the entire rest of the day flying across the map searching. When as I was taming a mythic pteranodon I planned to sacrifice for egg generation, I turned to see the mate for the thorny dragon I would be needing. It took just a few darts and I really can't express how happy I was to have gotten this longneck upgrade, as it had saved me so much time for all of these tames. I named the thorny Torps before trapping her in an orb and beginning the flight home, throwing out the thorny so they could start to get naughty, as well as getting the mammoths to begin breeding as well. They made sure to clean up some more of the abandoned tames that had simply been left around my base, integrating all the egg layers, though I did find the scorpion was actually useless since I couldn't integrate it, but at least I had the thornies breeding to sacrifice their babies into the claw machine. And that's when I saw the mammoth baby had birthed and made me decide to do a resource run, saddling up Talon and Tector to take to the skies to try and tackle the metal problem, smashing rocks throughout the afternoon, clearing out shrubbery to end off the day. And with all the resources I could ever need, it was time to make some actual progress once more. Saddling up Tia the Carno and charging off down the beach, I had to massacre anything and everything I could, building up charges as legendaries gain temporary damage buffs after each kill to a max of 100. So absolutely everything from Brontos to Dodos was a meal for my Carno. Even a volcanic Dodo Rex just got destroyed. And that's when I spotted what I thought was a primal resurrected, but was actually a nightmare triceratops. A tier above what I should be fighting, but I attacked. I began to charge in and out of battle with the trike, using health potions so my Carno would stay healthy as my Carno's bleed gradually ate away at the massive 44 million health trike. It was a game of cat and mouse, except I was the mouse as I kept up the fight, only attacking when I had a potion active. The fight was going great right up until my luck and health potions expired as the trike swatted my Carno into the ground. I mean, I got pretty close to killing the nightmare dino. I was only meant to take out Primal Resurrected next, but my dumbass got confused and I only noticed now as I was scripting this that was a nightmare. And it took some running to get home after the death of my Carno, now once again feeling like I needed new legendary dinos. And that's when I remembered a tame I'd seen very early on in my playthrough, the legendary Indominus Rex. So I set off to try and find one, finding demonic thorny dragons, when Mr. Pineapples, one of my patrons, messaged me for some help, as right near his base was a volcanic guardian. But before I dealt with that, I carried him on Tulip's back over to Skull Island so he could farm some crystal. Then got back to his base in the morning to hop on Torta Queenie, my Hydro Guardian. Waddled in as I was back to eat through the Guardian's health in order to douse the flames. And with the Guardian gone, I did have a look at Pineapple's base that seemed to be just as good as mine, but I had wasted enough time for now and continued my search, eventually finding a max level Indominus Rex. Perfect! Many darts fired and the indom was asleep. I just had run out of kibble, so that meant flying home through a storm, cooking up the kibble and then back to find that sleeping indom. Getting to it in the morning of day 77, I shoved in the kibble and named him Terrorbringer. Even though I didn't plan to use him, I planned to find him a female and get to breeding. A female that I actually found fairly quickly and knocked it out to tame it. I now just had to head home where I threw out the two indoms so they could start to breed. So now I just had to wait. So I made the call to spend my time trying to build some defenses and headed out on Tector, my mythic Anki, to harvest some stone. Smashing the rocks throughout the next morning, lashing them all together in order to set up some behemoth stone gates. Only day 78 and finally my base was almost fully enclosed. Throughout all that time some eggs had been hatched and raised, and thus it was a classic Ark time of throwing out an adult, shooting them with a euthanasia gun, and hacking apart their corpse for blood, meat and hide. Using the fresh hide to craft up a saddle in order to mount my newest, fully imprinted Indominus Rex. I chose to name him Twerp and this guy was insane. I quickly racked up 20 kills, then 40, 60, 80 and maxed at 100 like it was nothing. My strongest tame I had ever had. I kept up the rampage through to the next morning, searching for a primal resurrected to take out, crossing the giant sand bridges until I got to the volcano island where I spotted one. A primal resurrected Carno. I found a quick snack before turning to the Carno and charged in to take it out. It took hundreds of bites and a lot of cheese, but finally the Carno fell to its death, unlocking me the demonic rocket launcher. Its corpse also gave me some primal bones, which I would be needing a ton of, and it felt good to have defeated it. So feeling full of confidence, I set off across the rest of the island in search of a second primal. Finding one as the day was beginning to end, and I started to munch its butt with the same strategy as the first. Except I got too close as I took 2 bites. Enraging twerp who turned and ate me in one single bite. Well, crap. Respawning at home, I made up a new indom saddle in preparation of the rescue mission. And I had to raise up a new baby in the morning, then flew off on Tulip with an indom in my pockets. Getting back to see Twerp was still alive but under attack by demonic ferox that took him out. I had to lure it away into the water so I could drop in to collect my stuff. Finding it completely weighed me down. Threw out the new indom to load all of the junk and loot into its inventory, then turned to begin my revenge against the Carno. This time being much more careful to simply bite it and let the bleed slowly tick down its health, while I hid out in the water where it was too stupid to attack me. Killing it to gather even more primal bones and end off the day. I then was heading off in the morning when I spotted a demonic down the beach. A demonic dilo was fighting a primal resurrected trike. I chose to take the opportunity to steal the trike for myself and attack the trike, leading it towards me and into the water. Here I was able to easily bleed it down extremely carefully to ensure its timely demise. And while I was getting these primal bones, something I was in desperate need of was demonic blood in order to make demonic ingots. Thus, I turned to check out the dilo that was nearby and charged in, only to get squashed like a fly with zero chance of ever defeating it. Maybe demonics are stronger than I thought. I quickly made sure to top up my indoms to begin growing while I set off on a new one, except I needed health potions. I was fortunate to see a mythic Jerboa I could munch on, as well as the second one to get their mythic health potion drop, gradually building up the indom's kill count as well to up its damage. And now I wanted to reclaim my stuff. I just had a problem, and that was still the demonic dilo patrolling near my stuff. I tried sending in random indoms, sitting and waiting for an opportunity when I saw a chance to get close and sprinted in to bite the dilo as I hit around the corner. Except it followed me and blasted the indom, enraging it to knock me off and kill me. I needed a new strategy. Instead, mounting Tokolosh, my volcanic guardian, I needed to take out that demonic. So using Tokolosh, I started to rain fire down on the demonic, getting it down to 100,000 health as the potions kept me alive. 80,000 health as hellfire kept dropping. I pushed slightly forwards, but my potion was running out as I began to back off, with the dilo sitting at 50,000 health. I just had to play it safe, but the dilo was following, so I turned back in as my potion came off cooldown and we brought down the demonic. With the dead, I was able to eat the corpse, giving me 16 blood. A very important number to consider for later on, but now the area was safe. I got my stuff, putting it on Tokolosh. I should have just gone home then, when I instead continued roaming on Tokolosh, finding another demonic dilo, and I began to fire my health spikes dodging around the dilo, but I never expected the second one to blindside me, killing Tokolosh faster than I could chug a health potion. Rest in peace, Tokolosh. You will be missed. I flew back on my Alpha Terra in the same situation as I was merely at the start of the day, unable to get my stuff, this time with 2 demonics patrolling. Fortunately, I did get an opportunity in the morning to sprint in, grab my stuff, throw out an indom to transfer all of Tokolosh's loot onto, and sprinted the heck out of there. I wasn't giving up though. As I got back to base, I jumped onto Trala, my electric guardian, and set off raining down blasts of lightning behind me. I was going to take out those demonic dilos. I began to run circles around them, dropping the lightning destruction onto their heads. Blast after blast, the thunderstorm was brewing strongly, but so was the firestorm as I leapt forward straight into an attack I hadn't seen, melting Trial's circuits in seconds. I woke up once again and got back on my indom, running out to where I had died to look for the chance to walk in with my transfer gun and escape with my loot. I did try and send in an indom again, but it just died immediately. Getting demonic blood was definitely going to be a problem. In the morning of day 84, however, I saw that now since I'd killed a few primals, I was able to craft my first pieces of demonic kibble. I just had to trank one out, so I was crafting up more narcotics, then flew off on Tulip once more, flying off to see if I could trank those demonic dilos, but the darts just bounced off of the dilo skin. So this is where I tell you, the only way to knock out demonics is using the demonic rocket launcher. The weapon I had unlocked when I killed that first primal resurrected. In order to craft it, however, I needed primal polymer and electronics, which you get as a drop from primal resurrecteds and nightmares, and some demonic ingots, which I needed demonic blood in order to smelt. Since I'd neglected to collect any of the loot when I defeated those earlier primal resurrecteds, so imagine my surprise when I was running down the beach and spotted another nightmare triceratops. It was time for the rematch. But this time, I wasn't taking any chances. Luring it into the water and starting to munch at its butt, floating it into the water where it couldn't reach me, I continued to bite and bite, luring it back slowly but surely as I bit at it to bleed it down until finally it was dead. It gave me a max experience potion, a nightmare soul, and my first of the 7 unique nightmare tokens you need in order to summon in the current final boss, the Death Knight. I also remembered to loot the bag from the trike this time and got some nightmare health potions, primal poly and electronics, as well as a few other goodies to end off the day. The next day I continued my journey of death down the beach, chomping through everything right up until I found a primal resurrected trike. It was easy to take out simply by munching and backing away, making sure that it could never hit me back, finally taking down the trike so I could claim the loot for my collection. Getting closer and closer to having everything I needed for that demonic rocket launcher. Since I needed those resources and I knew I could kill some nightmares, I made the choice to craft a nightmare raptor summoning scroll and ran over to the nearby safe spot where I could summon it in. So long as it doesn't hit me, I can easily bleed it down. So much for just not getting hit. I flew back on Talon to see that Indom was still alive, as the nightmare raptor had left him alone. The Indom had also eaten all of my gear, so I managed to collect it fairly easily. And with everything recollected, it was time for round 2. And this time I shot the raptor first to lead it into the water. It was now a simple task of munch, 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 while staying away to prevent it attacking me and enraging my Indom. With it slayed, I grabbed the loot, now having 2 out of the 7 tokens I needed. Since I needed plenty more primal poly and primal electronics, I made up the 3rd nightmare scroll, the Nightmare Carno, and summoned it in the ocean. I began to munch at it only for it to attack me once, enrage my Indom and kill me. I was starting to regret my choice of legendary Indoms. I got back and reclaimed my Indom. Now though, I could continue my attempt at taking down this Carno using the munch and dodge attack, using the water to my advantage right up until it got to just 4 million health left, and got a lucky bite munching me once more, instantly killing me by enraging my Indom. When I got back, the Carno and its loot was nowhere to be seen. Maybe I should go for demonics before trying to finish off the remaining nightmares, as they're starting to feel like a bad dream. However, knowing I needed the demonic rocket launcher still, I made the choice to make another nightmare trike summoner, putting it in the water to easily kill him for his loot. This time getting a couple ascended demonic saddles. If only I had the tames I needed to use the saddles. But I also had gotten the final few pieces of primal polymer and electronics I needed for the rocket launcher, and now I just needed one more thing. I needed some demonic ingots. I needed at least 20 ingots, so that meant I needed 40 demonic blood. I had 16 so far. And in an attempt to cheese the need for ingots, I set up an industrial grinder to see if I could grind the extra demonic saddles, but alas, that did not work. So I had to head out to see if I could find an easy demonic to kill. In hindsight, I now know easy and demonic does not belong in the same sentence. What was easy, however, was another primal resurrected raptor that I took out using bleed, water, and my indom being taller than the prehistoric undead chicken. And it was then day 88 when I got home for a resupply, but I really needed to take out some demonics for their blood. This time I was heading out towards the swamp, eventually fighting my way through the forests only to spot a demonic thorny dragon. It basically one-shot my indom. Easy demonic kills, right? I decided I needed to try what had worked before, recrafting everything I needed for taming as I couldn't get back to my stuff right now. Then grappled up high on a cliff where I summoned in a tameable Volcanic guardian. It was a level 90 and a fairly easy tame. Named it Tacos and saddled it up, and I ran back on Tacos where I began to rain down hellfire, or at the very least I attempted to hit the demonic for the entire rest of the day. But it simply was not enough damage and I chose to abandon it for now. Instead choosing to level up Tacos as I searched around the area looking for a new demonic that I could cheese for its blood. Eventually finding a demonic dilo in the early hours of day 90. And it was time to rain absolute hell on this demonic, dropping thousands of fireballs onto its head. I had to kill this dilo and I had to get at least 25 blood in order to make the demonic rocket launcher. So finally, after what felt like the entire day of raining fire had passed, the dilo was dead. 25 blood is all I needed as I slowly walked up to the dilo and swung my pickaxe. 35 blood! I was stoked. All it took now was to craft a demonic rocket launcher and let's go tame some demonics. Tulip and I set off in the early hours of the morning, desperately searching until finally I found a level 85 demonic thorny. Not the best level, but I was going to need a breeding pair for hide. So using my shiny new rocket launcher began to fire missiles at the lizard. It took just a few in order for it to fall asleep, then fed it my kibble, waking up as my new, most powerful tame. I named her Trouble after what I'd been through to get to this point, then flew around till I found a low-level male, blew it up with my rockets, fed it the kibble before trapping it up to start flying home, threw them out so they could start breeding, then hatched my first baby demonic in the morning of day 92. I decided not to sacrifice the baby for hide, instead letting her raise up and added her to the breeding pair, naming her Torrential to boost my egg production. This seriously accelerated my breeding as I was able to hatch multiple babies. These ones didn't make it as they got sacrificed for the hide. Enough hide to make a saddle and head out for my first ever ride on a demonic. The damage was insane. As I shredded through a nightmare trike, I felt so powerful. So of course I had to test it out and made up the next 3 summoning scrolls. The Carno melted, the Rex incinerated, and the Spino evaporated. It was amazing. I only needed 2 more nightmare tokens, being the Uti and the Dodo Reaper, the 2 most dangerous nightmares. But I had to fight them and made up the scrolls, running back to my spot where I summoned in the Uti. It was going well right up until the Uti screamed, fearing my Thorny into a panic to begin running away. But I kept my cool and fed it some health potions to tank through the fear, eventually snapping out of it, allowing me to finish off the Uti. All that was left was one final nightmare, the Nightmare Dodo Reaper, with 132 million health. I never expected it to have such high damage resistance. So I attacked and attacked and attacked, attacking for so long that it was halfway through day 95 as its health was getting close to finished. But so were my health potions as the Dodo Reaper barely killed me at only 70,000 health left. By the time I got back on a new demonic thorny, the Reaper had 70 million health. I didn't want to do that again, so I was going to need a new strategy. I was heading off in search of a legendary stego. I found one around midday and was able to trank it out with some darts, feeding it kibble and named it Tonk Tonk. Once home, I made sure to restock my health potions, then headed back to the Dodo Reaper, fed my stego a max experience potion and pumped every single level into health. Then the Dodo Reaper charged in, but this is why I wanted the legendary stego, as it is the absolute tank with its own damage reduction while still having the bleed effect of legendaries. It was a simple fight of just out-tanking the Dodo Reaper as my bleed attack ticked down its health until it was dead, beating the 7th and final nightmare for its token to summon the Death Knight. But I was going to need an army, and these low-level thorny dragons were not going to cut it. That's why when I found this level 135 demonic gorilla, I was stoked. So with my rocket launcher, I began to fire the mini nukes in order to drag out the big gorilla. I named him Tok Tok once he tamed, then flew off to find him a mate. One I found nearby, and while nuking it, I did accidentally put myself into a nap, but it was out. Named her Taliu, then started the journey home. Set them both up to start breeding, and I even set up a specialized dino depot terminal to automatically pick up the babies as they're birthed. And after some waiting, I had a new, fully imprinted gorilla. I named her Tiny Tina and went off to test her out, launching demonic rock explosions, but I wanted a true test and crafted 4 Nightmare Rex scrolls and summoned in the first. It went fine, I guess. The gorilla dealt way less damage than the thornies, even at a much higher level, but it was just so much tankier. And then I disconnected. Classic Ark, am I right? I reconnected to see I was dead and quickly saddled up a new thorny and ran back. My gorilla was still alive and tanking, so using my thorny was able to finish off the Nightmare Rex. And together the thorny and I finished off the last few Nightmare Rexes, and while we do that, thanks again to Warthunder for sponsoring today's video. Make sure you download the game today using my link in the video description. New players and those who haven't played in 6 months will get this awesome bonus pack. And enjoy the rest of the video. I had one final Rex to take out in order for day 99 to come to an end, and this was it. I just had to fight the Death Knight. I spent the morning preparing an army of thorny dragons, demonic gorillas, some legendaries, and Torta Queenie. The army representing all of my patrons who have continued to support me and my channel. I literally could not make these videos without your guys' support, so I'd love it if you check out down below. You'll get access to any servers I record on, as well as have a channel where you can chat with me on a daily basis. But the time had come. This was it. It was time to summon in the Nightmare Death Knight. With the boss dead, I swam over to claim my loot, gaining 2 pieces of the Death Knight armor. And I decided to summon in the remaining pieces just so you can check it out since it looks really sick. And thank you so much for watching. Go watch my 100 Days Primal Fear if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.